M1 Max. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of GPU cores, I see. Not a bad CPU either. There's a thirst to prove yourself. I can hear all the YouTubers blown away by the magic. Where to put you? Let me see. I understand what you're trying to tell me, but no! I don't want to see you rendering a single video clip of you picking flowers at the park. What I want to see is you eating explosions, crying over particles, stockpiling graphic animations. I want to see you scrolling through a 500 layers After Effects VFX sequence, where your competitors leave all their sweat and blood on the render battlefield. Then, and only then, will we know what you have inside. M1 Max.
I have always edited videos and motion graphics on Windows, but today I would like to give a little bit of homework to the latest Apple babies. We are going to open the same After Effects projects on the M1, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max MacBooks and my Windows desktop workstation that features a very powerful i9-10940X processor and an NVIDIA RTX 2080 Ti graphic card. Maybe you remember that video I posted a while ago on comparing Premiere to Resolve. Well, you know, the project file of the intro, it had like not just one layer, not 2 layers, not 10 layers, but 500 layers stacked on top of each other with plenty of different effects, motion blur and no pre-renders, so I thought it would be a good stress test. I will also render other types of projects and do some testing on the worst Resolve projects I could find because I use DaVinci Resolve just as much as After Effects. Will the M1 Max processor beat the beefy desktop computer, thou almighty king of render speeds? Let's find out. We will be using the latest version of Resolve, version 17.4.1, and the latest beta of After Effects that have been both optimized to run natively on the Apple M1 chip. Before talking render times, I wanted to take a look at generic actions that I do on a daily basis, just to see how all the different setups behave. First, startup time. So I took my stopwatch and I timed how long After Effects took to launch and have the same project ready to go on each device. The MacBook Pro all took around like 7 to 8 seconds and the desktop computer twice as much. Then I took a look at general scrolling and playback for all 4 computers. As I move the playback head, I tend to find better performance on the M1 Pro and M1 Max laptops. The desktop computer is a bit behind and more laggy, and the M1 is even slower. So the MacBooks M1 Pro and Max are the winners here. In order to measure playback and preview performance from a more scientific standpoint, I cleared all the cache after loading the project and I timed how long it would take for the playback heads to reach 10 seconds of preview at half of the Full HD project resolution. So an ideal real-time preview would therefore take the playback heads 10 seconds to reach the 10 seconds mark. It took the M1 32.5 seconds, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max 19.5 seconds, and the desktop workstation 15.5 seconds to reach that 10 seconds mark. Another test I did is applying the well-known 3D camera tracker effect on a 30 seconds clip recorded in ProRes 422 Ultra HD, and then, well, here the results were very surprising because the M1 MacBooks were much faster than the desktop workstations. Now let's talk render speeds. I really spent some time making sure every computer would have the closest starting state as possible. The very same After Effects performance settings, the same software versions, all plugged into AC power source and at the same room temperature with all the memory and SSD cache deleted before each renders. On the big 500 layers After Effects project, that 1-minute intro in 1080p with motion blur turned on, we can see that the M1 finished rendering in 23 minutes, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max at around 70 minutes, and the desktop PC in just around 11 minutes. On this other project that doesn't use the same effects but is still a good benchmark because of the multiple layers in 3D space and the particles involved, the results look pretty consistent with what we've had previously. I also opened a more simple project in which I made explanatory workflows almost in 2D space. As opposed to the previous project, it had quite a few pre-comps and nested compositions, so I was curious to see the results. Again, we can find the same kind of results, even though the M1 Max GPU started kicking in a little here. Finally, I opened a straightforward After Effects project with very few effects, and this ultimately confirms the fact that the M1 Pro is a very close call with the M1 Max when it comes to After Effects projects. So when I finished conducting these tests, I thought the latest M1 chips are really awesome, and it's completely insane to see a desktop workstation power into such a portable laptop. But why buy the more expensive M1 Max when the M1 Pro seems to have almost the same performance? Like, what's the point? Well, actually, the problem comes from After Effects itself. This software has always been very strongly CPU based, and even though the latest M1 beta on Mac brings an impressive leap forward in terms of multi-frame rendering, most of the software still relies heavily on the CPU. So yeah, almost no effects actually use the GPU. It is only used for very specific tasks in After Effects. Since both the M1 Max MacBook and the M1 Pro MacBook both share the same CPU, I guess this is why there is a very little difference between the two on After Effects. But what about other softwares? There is one in particular that gave very surprising results, and it's DaVinci Resolve. Let's get going. I opened the worst DaVinci Resolve project I could find on my computer. This 25-second video, for middle things, has plenty of clips, fusion effects, fusion titles, sound effects, fairlight effects, and both spatial and temporal noise reduction on every single clip in the timeline. I think it's a good example of a real works project. Well, guess what? On that project, the M1 took around 16 minutes, the M1 Pro 7 minutes, the Windows i9 Workstation 3 minutes and 31 seconds, but the M1 Max was the fastest of all, finishing at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. When looking at the GPU utilization, it is clear that Resolve makes a much smarter use of the GPU resources, efficiently using all the available power on all the 32 cores of the M1 Max. So when using Resolve, the M1 Max will likely be just as fast as a powerful top-of-the-class Windows workstations, 2 times faster than the M1 Pro, and almost 5 times faster than the M1 processor, which is already a beast in its class. Now let's wrap it up. Is the M1 Max more powerful than the good old big and beefy desktop computers? It's close, but the M1 Max still has slightly inferior performance, so I think the big computer still beats it. Am I switching from the big i9 workstation to the latest M1 Max MacBook Pro? Maybe, time will tell, and I will update you in my pinned comment below. Even if I don't see myself doing 100% of my jobs on the MacBook Pro yet, I do finally see a laptop as a viable option for working on projects when I'm on the go instead of using TeamViewer. In 15 years, I have never managed to do video editing properly on a laptop. You see that XPS 15 laptop? Well, it has an i9. But it's by far, unquestionably, the shittiest laptop I have ever used. I invested around 2,000 euros after seeing very good reviews online at the time, but after only a year I got CPU throttling at like 0.5 GHz, the speakers stopped working, the webcam is undetected, Wi-Fi dropouts, and it always seems as though its soul is burning from the inside just when I go on Google. Is the M1 Max better than the M1 Pro? Well, Ultimately, I think it really depends on which software you plan to use mostly. Both of those MacBooks share the same CPU, they're only different on the GPU, so do some research on the softwares that you use. To what extent do they actually rely on the GPU? Have they been optimized for the M1 chips, or are they running on the Rosetta emulation? From my experience, Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects are known to be very CPU based, so I don't think you will notice that much of a difference between the two in your everyday life. For Resolve though, it is a completely different story, and for this reason, I think I'll keep you, my dear little
M1 Max.